development and sustainable developments. So this is the one that we've been, doing. This is our topics now. Okay. Then this is a big topics. Then we have measuring economic progress. Then we have barrier to developments. And then a longer topic will be on the strategies to promote economic growth and economic developments. So we basically have 1, 2, 3, 4, including the ongoing one. So if we be able to cover as much as possible, then it is good for us. Or another one is that we keep the last topic, the longest topic. If you go to the pages, it's 476 to 520, so close to 50 pages. So it's a very big topic at our next year. So your suggestion macam mana? Nak pulun habis, pulun spiral?
Bulan habis pun boleh, next year boleh boleh
Mantap.
next year boleh ni revise balik yang chapter 1 dengan chapter 2 punya.
Okay. So what about the others? Yang lain setuju ke? Azima?
Agree.
Setuju.
Teacher.
Okay. So kalau setuju, so we try to teacher buat kat sini. So teacher akan cover 28, 29, 30 kita akan buat group presentation. So kita akan divide into 4 groups. Group 31, chapter 31 ni kita split into 2 groups. Nanti you divide lah, you ambil bahagian mana. Such a long topic and two. So it means 2 groups in form 1 chapter 28. Okay, and then measuring economic progress and barriers to development. So can you discuss among yourself siapa yang buat siapa or go by grouping mana? Boleh kan? Okay. So it's good if you maintain the existing topic, existing groups that you have. You ada group RLP ke?
Ada teacher.
Dan kita bagai group RLP. So how you name the group RLP? The group 1, 2, 3, 4 ke?
Name group leader.
Group leader. So who's are the group leader?
Saya, Arham, Led dengan Ellie.
Azima, Arham, Led and Ellie.
Saya, Arham, Led, Ellie.
Ayi. Okay. So we let the group leader decide lah. You all nak group mana? Boleh. Okay. So sebab kita masih banyak lagi topik. So nanti you letak dekat WhatsApp lah. You all pilih group topik mana. Okay. So let's continue with our economics developments and sustainable developments. So this is 442. Teacher buka kejap Teacher punya mouse tak boleh pakai. Ni, tak lebih. Okay, chapter 29, that is actually topic yang been discussed, tapi we learn it again, we stress again because they're under economic growth and development. So it's not something that new to us, something that we've been learning before this, but we keep it as one separate topic again, because we are basically looking at the developments, or basically this topic is on developing countries. So how we describe Malaysia? Are we developing countries? Are we advanced country? We are not advanced country,
Developing.
right? We are developing. So when we say developing, usually we have a our notion of developing is that the very poor, like Myanmar, Vietnam, but we are the, developing slightly on the advanced stage, but not advanced yet. Okay, so it's totally different than compared to Singapore. Okay, last time kita stop sampai talking about source of growth, is that right? This is okay, so this is basically in terms of how we categorize different countries. So how do we say about Malaysia, Laos, Cambodia?
Teacher, hari tu
Yeah.
stop dekat physical capital. Yang number
Kita,
3.
kita start dengan physical capital That space. Kita masih awal lagi kan?
429 teacher.
429. Okay.
426, sorry, 426.
Okay. Okay, this topic is talking about source of economic growth. So this is where sometimes we can relate to our PPC curve, because when we start with PPC curve and we're talking about movement of the PPC curve outwards, that's indicate potential economic growth. So against this talking about what are the factors that can actually lead to increase in national income, i.e. economic growth. So we still have categories in turn land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur, something like that. Okay, but when you have it in your essays, then your points need to be very specific in terms of your resources. So you have to go by the quantity and the quality of the resources, or discovery of the resources, or anything else. So that in terms of, do we have natural resources that we can manipulate, we can exploit for us to increase our production? Yes or no. So it's very clear cut, is because it depends on our geographical locations of our country itself. Then we do have a second one, is human capital. So this is where we're talking about the productivity comes in. This is talking about skills and the unskilled workers, or also indicates in terms of if we having skilled workers that indicate productivity wise will be increased. Having a lot of unskilled workers, meaning that it also limits our productivity wise, because they do not have enough knowledge and skill to come up with a innovation or creations. Okay, so the most important over here, talking about human capital, then the first thing we definitely can associate human capital, the quality of human capital, with two things. One is education, next one is healthcare. Both are very important. So, so that's why in the countries like Singapore, who basically have limited resource, right? Who says that's what their best choice is to develop, is to promote a good quality of labor. Okay, and so is Malaysia. So it's just that for Malaysia, we do have a lot of resources, lands, we do have primary commodities. So making that in the end, we say that we have both, that in the end, we're not being able to increase a lot because our quality of labor not as is still okay, but it's not highly productive, right? And then talking about, so when we're talking about primary commodities, um, then we do have a lot of problems with primary commodities. Okay, so educations include in terms of formal education, or it could be vocational, could be trainings, and so on. Okay, and healthcare. Then the next one will be physical capital and technology. So to be realistic wise, When we want to make a productions, we need gadgets, we need tools, and how advanced is the tools make a difference. Are we still using the traditional tools? Are we using up-to-date materials, tools, gadgets, robots, and so on? That will actually increase our productivity. Okay, and this productivity is not only on manufacturing sectors, but could be also in agriculture sectors. Okay, and something that you have to bear in mind, this one is not free, it's not cheap, it's very expensive. Okay, but having the capitals, having the technological factors, knowing the know-how will make a difference. Okay, so physical capital include factories, machines, shops, outlets, motor vehicles, okay, all those things. Can we include internet access? Boleh masuk tak dalam ni?
Boleh teacher.
Yeah, so we call it infrastructure kan. All those things are buildings semua tu. Part of hospitals could be part of our infrastructure, but internet could be a soft infrastructure. Right? So which is very important nowadays for doing a business, because having the internet access will be able to expand your business, or it makes your business operations run smoothly and very effective at a short period of time. Okay. Then we do have over here two concepts will be on capital widening and capital deepening. Okay, widenings where extra capital is used with an increased amount of labor. So talking about widen in terms of we add more labor, tambah labor. So the ratio per workers does not change because we add more labor. Okay. And deepening is that an increase in the amount of capital for each worker. So we have more gadgets, right? So making more productive. Okay. Capital deepening will usually lead to improvements in labor productivity as well as increase in total productions. Tiba-tiba teacher teringat kita punya standardized test lah. Ketiga kan? Betul tak? Okay, so nanti kita type kat GC Okay, institutional factors. So this is where we're talking about institutional factors like banking, institutional factors like legal systems or politics, or even infrastructure, international relationships. So, you know what, so if you go by even Malaysian passports, with our Malaysian passport, we can go to 100 plus countries without visa, right? So talking about when you do have you making commutings or travelings inside a business or in terms of leisure, for vacation is feasible, make it easier. And if you're talking about business community, then we make the business a lot easier for them. Okay. So that would be a country like when we talk about developing countries, so sometimes the institutional are not well in place. Their banking systems are not tip tops, or talking about the legal system is not strongly established. Okay, so the possible benefit of economic growth cannot be overstated, and indeed there is significant evidence that economic growth has enabled countries to raise billions of people out of poverty. Economic growth enables citizens to enjoy higher incomes and higher material standards of living, and that is what very much desirable by the economy. High economics result in a greater tax revenue for the government. So what good about the having economic growth means that the government can still now have, the governments can actually tax people. Okay, but you have to note that the government can only tax people if those people, if talking about the population earns money, income, their income is more than their taxable income level. Okay, so for Malaysia, maybe if your earnings 2005, you masih tak bayar tax lagi, right? So what does it means when you graduate another 4 or 5 years from now? So if your earnings, your income per month tak sampai 2005, tak payah bayar tax. But the moment it's increased to 2,501, dah kena bayar tax. Okay, it should be assumed that growth always lead to economic developments, and certainly not the case for economic growth. So what does it mean that when we say economic growth will definitely lead to economic developments, simply because with economic growth we do have higher incomes. We have higher income per capita. With the higher income capita, we'll be able to consume, to buy services, to have items that will increase our standard of living. So economic growth usually associated we can lead to economic development. But there are some cases we have economic growth but we do not have economic development. How is it so? Kita ada banyak duit tapi our standard of living tak berapa tinggi. Ada tak country yang ada banyak duit but standard of living dia tak berapa bagus? Negara kaya yang banyak duit lah. How do you think of Brunei? Brunei kaya kan? Banyak duit kan? Development dia macam mana?
Macam tu. Macam biasa.
Biasa-biasa tu macam mana? Biasa-biasa tu dia orang nak pergi shopping pun tak boleh pergi kat situ. Dia kena keluar kan?
Malaysia.
Pergi Malaysia. Right? So dia punya standard of living is maybe on average biasa-biasa je, but it's not as compared to Malaysia. But in term of income, economic growth, national income dia far better than Malaysia. Okay, so when it says economic developments, is indicate having economic growth. So but to have higher standard of living, you need to have money, means, right? So economic growth confirm akan jadi akan dapat economic development, but economic growth itself on its own does not mean economic developments. Okay, because there are some countries that have economic growth tapi the money is not spent to the people, on the people. For example, duit ada beli weapons, nuclear weapons, right? Or increase the military expenses and so on. So in the end, the people will not be able to have a higher living standards. Okay, so any questions? Okay, if no, then we go into what is sustainable development. Okay, the topic of sustainability adalah topik yang penting, economic growth and development penting sebab last month, November, there is a question on sustainability. Macam soalan dia. They evaluate the use of carbon tax to reduce threats to sustainability. Okay, so sustainability is something that it can get along with a lot of topics, in micro or macro. So something that we have to bear in mind. Okay, so let's go into more sustainable developments. Endless economic growth based on consumption of finite resources cannot continue indefinitely. Okay, so Cici nak dengar suara siapa? Cici nak Ain lah. Oh, tak dengar suara Ain. Ain, tolong baca Ain.
What is sustainable development?
So
Mm-mm.
unless economic growth based on the consumption of finite resources cannot continue indefinitely. The World Commission on Environment and Development was formed by the United Nations in 1983, and in 1987 the report Our Common Future was published. The commission was of the opinion that economic growth cannot be sustained into the future if environmental degradation is taking place and non-renewable resources are being used up at too fast a rate. The term sustainable development was introduced and defined as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs.
Boleh repeat tak the whole sentence? Sebab tu sentence yang you kena hafal or or at least keep notes of the keywords. Repeat balik that sentence.
The term sustainable development was introduced and defined as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs.
Summarize kan apa yang penting dalam sentence tu?
Meaning that sustainable development ni maksud we can achieve everything today without compromising the future's needs.
Okay, thank you. Sambung.
In economics, we learn about the advantages of economic growth and may even tend to assume that all countries seek to achieve high rates of economic growth. However, it becomes increasingly vital to appreciate the possible negative consequences of economic growth in terms of the effects on the environment and the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Teacher, can you scroll up? When we examine how resources should be allocated, we must consider how such resource allocation affect future generations. Okay, sama teacher.
Kau panggil kawan lain kawan lelaki.
Kawan lelaki.
Kita ada kawan lelaki.
Panggil Fakrul lah.
Okay, Fakrul. Highly demanded. Fakrul on demand.
Yes, Cik. Pada mana ya tadi?
Ain jawab, Ain.
As economies grow.
As economic.
Okay.
Sambung sini lah kan?
Mm-mm.
As economic grow, so there's the demand for more and more goods and services and more energy to produce these goods and services. Factories, power plants, and household all consume vast amount of resources and energy to meet their demands, resulting in earth-threatening global problems. In Chapter 9, we saw that these environmental challenges, including the climate crisis, can be examined using the economic theories of negative externality of consumption and production, along with threats to common access resources. The economist Herman Daly talks about uneconomic growth and has defined it as occurring when increases in production come at an expense in resources and well-being that is worth more than the items made. We can conclude that economic growth based on the current consumption patterns is clearly not sustainable and is in reality uneconomic growth.
Okay, thank you. Fakrul, panggil kawan.
Saya laki ke perempuan?
Mungkin lah perempuan.
Perempuan. Wafi je.
Okay, Wafi.
Mana teacher?
Mana Fakrul?
Sambung new page.
New page.
The effect ke? The effects on a human.
The effects on humans will be felt most severely in the developing countries. Most tragically,
Those that will be most harmed by the climate crisis are those that contributed the least to the greenhouse gas emissions that have created the crisis. Access to safe water will become even more precarious. Even now, more than 1 billion people do not have access to safe water. Tropical diseases may spread further north. Droughts will become more frequent and intense in Asia and Africa, and flooding will likely become a bigger problem in temperate and humid regions. Food production in the tropics and subtropics is likely to suffer. Food production could become easier in middle and high latitudes, but there is no guarantee that this will lessen the risk to food security. Millions of people will be affected by rising sea levels. This includes coastal areas along with low-lying islands in the Caribbean Sea and Pacific Ocean. As we mentioned earlier, economic progress needs to be measured in terms of economic development that can be achieved in a sustainable manner.
Okay, so all those things we're talking about the bullet points, talking about what people anticipates, it's like the today's or in the near future what is going to happen. So kat mana yang betul kena kat Malaysia? The first one, access to safe water, tak ada kan?
Yang
Itu yang mana?
kecemaran tu cik. Selangor tak.
Pencemaran, yes. Oh, kat sini mak perasan tak ada COVID-19. Right? So the people do not anticipate that we're going to have a virus strikes, the virus COVID-19 strike the whole world, and this is something new to the economy. So you can bet that in the near future, if they were to, edit their books, then they akan masukkan pandemic 19, talking about virus, the pandemic that affect the whole nation, something because some people, some countries not be able to control, or talking about it's very hard to control the citizens from spreading. Okay, so this is what we have the sustainable development goals. So this is something that you have to keep in mind, betul-betul in mind in your head, simply because we want to have a questions on this one, maybe term of the objective of economic goals. So you can tahu kebanyakan dia, because sometimes soalan tu suruh bagi identify the economic goals itself. Okay. So the first one will be in term of, tengok banyak sangat kita. Okay. Now this is something that we have to bear in mind. Okay, the goal sebenarnya dulu yang goal tu kita panggil Millennium Development Goals abad akan datang. But now has been replaced, tukar dengan nama baru SDGs, right? Sustainable Development Goals. So this is not a new goals, this is not old goals, it's a renewed versions of the goal with a lot of refinements. Okay. So what you can do is that, so SDC will be Sustainable Development Goals. So okay, you can bet that they may ask you this question because you are new. All this while we're talking about Millennium Development Goals. Zaman dulu, sekarang is the latest. So this is something that you could have in your exam. Sebab dia benda baru kan. Okay, can we have, tadi last baca tadi adalah Wafi kan?
Bisa.
Okay, so Wafi panggil kawan untuk baca.
Laki ke perempuan bisa?
Kita ambil opposite sex, Wafi cari lelaki.
Azim dah ke teacher?
Azim belum.
Azim.
Start dari sini siap paling atas.
Atas ada apa?
Tak bukan sini.
Okay. Step di sini lah. Jangan salah tu. Waste time pula.
Throughout this course companion, there have been references to this very important example of global cooperation. We now look at this more closely. The Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, were born at the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development in Rio de Janeiro in 2012. The objective was to produce a set of universal goals that met the urgent environmental, political, and economic challenges facing the world. The SDGs replaced the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, which started a global effort in 2000 to tackle the indignity of poverty. The MDGs established measurable, universally agreed objectives for tackling extreme poverty and hunger, preventing deadly diseases, and expanding primary education to all children, among other development priorities. The objectives were set to be met by the year 2015. From 2000 to 2015, the MDGs drove progress in several important areas, reducing income poverty, providing much needed access to water and sanitation, driving down child mortality, and drastically improving maternal health. They also started a global movement for free primary education, inspiring countries to invest in their future generations. Most significantly, the MDGs made huge strides in combating HIV or AIDS and other treatable diseases such as malaria and tuberculosis. Key
Okay. Hazim, bagi orang lain baca.
Saya nak Christina dah ke?
Christina belum. Christina?
Key MDG achievements were more than 1 billion people have been lifted out of extreme poverty since 1990. Child mortality dropped by more than half since 1990. The number of out-of-school children has dropped by more than half since 1990, and HIV or AIDS infections fell by almost 40% since 2000. The SDGs came into effect in January 2016 and will continue until 2030. The SDGs are a bold commitment to tackle some of the more pressing challenges facing the world today. They are also an urgent call to shift the world onto a more sustainable path. All 17 goals interconnect, meaning success in one affects success for others. Dealing with the threat of climate change impacts how we manage our fragile natural resources. Achieving gender equality or better health helps eradicate poverty, and fostering peace and inclusive societies will reduce inequalities and help economies prosper.
Christina dah habis baca semua?
Yang table ni belum? Table nak baca tak?
Table?
Belum.
Table, goal.
Belum.
So kita orang lain lah. Christina, so panggil orang lain.
Saya nak panggil Aziz.
Okay, Aziz. What's your first goal? SDG.
First goal is end poverty in all its form everywhere. Second, end hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. Third, ensure health, life and promote well-being for all at all age. Fourth, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Fifth, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Sixth, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. Seventh, ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Promote sustainable, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. Build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation.
Teacher buat answer.
10 is reduce inequality within and among countries. Next, make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. 12, ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. Take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. Next is conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. Protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystem. Sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and reverse land degradation and halt biodiversity loss. Promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development. Provide access to justice for all and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development.
Wow, banyaknya 17. How many can you remember, Aziz?
Maybe I'll take like 5.
5. Okay. What are your 5 things that you remember?
Maybe macam boleh relate sikit. Health, education, gender equality. Rasa macam semua boleh relate, tapi water sanitation, and then energy.
Okay. But you have to bear in mind kan, sebab dia ada banyak kan. So it is also possible that masa exam kita next year, they ask you to give like 2 or 4, and for every point 1 markah tau, and you have to explain. So we need to, yes, just like Aziz take notes of related things and you can relate to. Yang paling senang adalah poverty yang kat atas sekali kan, end of poverty everywhere anywhere kan. Kan paling senang poverty. Then talking about health and talking about equity, gender equality. So at least you guys remember 5 at least. So because just in case you have it in your paper 2, it will be a bonus questions. Okay. So Aziz, jom panggil kawan you untuk jawab. Untuk jawab, untuk baca next page. Perempuan.
Dina.
Okay.
Alright. Although the goals may seem rather broad and general, each of the goals is supported by more specific targets. For example, the targets for goal number 1, no poverty, are by 2030, reduce at least by half the proportion of men, women, and children of all ages living in poverty in all its dimensions according to national definitions. Implement nationally appropriate social protection systems and measures for all, including floors, and by 2030, achieve substantial coverage of the poor and the vulnerable. By 2030, ensure that all men and women, in particular the poor and the vulnerable, have equal rights to economic resources, as well as access to basic services, ownership and control over land, and other forms of property, inheritance, natural resources, appropriate new technology, and financial services, including microfinance. By 2030, build the resilience of the poor and those in vulnerable situations, and reduce their exposure and vulnerability to climate-related extreme events and other economic, social, and environmental shocks and disasters. Ensure significant mobilization of resources from a variety of sources, including through enhanced development cooperation, in order to provide adequate and predictable means for developing countries. In particular, list developed countries to implement programs and policies to end poverty in all its dimensions.
Okay.
Create sound policy frameworks at the national, regional, and international levels based on pro, poor, and gender-sensitive development strategies to support accelerated investment in poverty eradication actions.
Okay, do you think any one of these yang possible tak achieve, Dina? Ada tak yang macam susah nak achieve? This
Yang
is by
susah nak achieve
2030.
ke? Yang susah nak achieve?
Ataupun yang possible nak achieve. Ada one yang
I
macam
think yang
achieve apa? Yang mana?
I think yang achievable yang dekat atas tadi tu dekat sekejap. Dekat maybe dekat build resilience of the poor and those yang basically yang protect resilience of the poor from climate related extreme events.
With the pandemic coming, the pandemics we have in the world is been struck by pandemics for 2 years. Would that things, the pandemic impact consequences makes makes the economy works in reverse. We have more people, more sick people, more poverty, more orphans. Betul tak? Kan macam pandemics bukan, it doesn't differentiates, doesn't pick countries. Everyone kena, even you are poor countries, developing countries. So with the pandemic stuff, sebenarnya they might be, they will be have a tougher time to push forward dengan punya achieve the goals. So something that we have to bear in mind. It seems kalau tak ada pandemics, we might be able to achieve at least most of it. But now with the pandemic stuff, then really depends. Is the country is badly hurt by the pandemics? And if it is, then it should be they may have difficulties. If they don't, then maybe it's easier for them to achieve the objective. Okay, so teacher will end now. It's 1:30 pun. So pukul 3 nanti you terus access dekat Google Classroom and then of course macam biasa you masuk Zoom and terus jawab macam biasa lah. Is it okay?
Nanti masuk Zoom teacher.
Tak, Zoom teacher dah tak ada Zoom dah 40 minit. Zoom you all lah. Boleh? Okay. Okay, so see you again. Bye-bye semua.
Thank you, teacher.
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 Mm-mm.